Alright guys, so today I wanted to talk about, just to give a little brief review of Essence League, what I did, things I accomplished, and things you can take away from this. So as you know, Essence League ended today, earlier. I made a total of 2 characters this league. This was my first character. He's a level 90 Trickster that utilizes the skill Stormcall, combined with the helmet Katava's Thirst to trigger a bunch of other spells. I made a video on this, and you can look it up if you so desire. So this was the first character I made, and I leveled up. I was originally planning on doing like a Firestorm Chieftain build, which I'm probably going to start the next league with. But the big thing with Essence is that Essence had these Essence monsters that dropped these items you could use to guarantee certain properties when you were crafting, and that made it very easy to level with spell daggers. So what I did with this character for most of the time is I used 2 daggers, and this is the most recent one I crafted on this character back when I was playing him. And then I moved from the double daggers to a dagger and Doriani's Catalyst. Again, the idea is to scale our elemental damage as high as possible and scale our crit. This build uses Katava's Thirst. I never hit a Helm enchant on this. I also crafted my chest here with an Essence of Greed, which guarantees a life roll. So we crafted this with guarantee life, crafted this with guarantee spell damage, and other than that, we also use Voidbringers. These are key to be able to enable the combo with this. But the important thing I wanted to talk about with this character is that while this character was a good build to potentially go throughout Essence, because you had easy access to crafting, which is one of the most appealing things that made people scale actually really fast in this build, in this league. This build was not, he's not the tankiest character. I ended up with 5k life and 1.5k ES and 690 unreserved mana, and I have Mind Over Matter. But overall, it was a decent character to get started, and I used him to farm up my next character, which I will talk about in a bit. Some of the key things that this character uses that are very powerful things you can use on a lot of characters. The first one is using Orb of Storms. So a lot of characters use Orb of Storms because you can cast this and it auto triggers and sends out a little lightning bolt. And in my case, it curses my enemies on hit with Warlord's Mark and also generates power charges for me on crit. So a lot of people use Orb of Storms to apply curses, proc elemental overload, as well as to generate power charges, and it's great for all 3 of those things. So if you're looking for a support skill for a character in the next league, I would highly recommend using something like this. Now, the Essence mechanic itself is getting moved into the core game, but at 1/6 the occurrence rate it did before. So it's going to be harder to just guarantee easy crafts like good spell damage or good life on your gear. So you have to be a little more sensitive in what you're doing with your first build. And while this character, again, he was very fun. He was kind of a cookie-cutter build, and I'm probably not going to play something like this again. If I go the Stormcall route again, I'm probably going to go Inquisitor or Elementalist. But Trickster with this character was primarily to enable use of this helm. And while cool, it really wasn't, it's not incredibly efficient for what I was doing with it. The biggest thing that this does, it casts like a Shock Nova and a Molten Shell and an Arc whenever I spend 100 mana to use a skill. So it would burst enemies nearby me and then give me a defensive bonus. And that was about it. Now, other things that you can do that a lot of people like to do on casters is use Whirling Blades with a dagger or Shield Charge while holding a shield. These are very effective, and if you're playing a caster that does not use a staff, I would highly recommend either using Whirling Blades if you're using a dagger, and if you're using a shield, even if you're using a dagger, you're probably going to want Shield Charge because it's very, very fast. Alright, so I used this character to farm up a bunch of currency, which then I used to buy the gear for and enable my second character, which I'm going to go talk about now. So my second character is one I haven't shown a lot of videos on because he's very similar to some of my other characters, and the reason why I haven't shown anything on him is I kind of wanted to keep this build a quote-unquote secret until I was done, and I'm at a point where I'm prepared to share it now, but I'm not going to be... The build guide is forthcoming, it's not going to be this video. So what this character is an Inquisitor that uses Mjolnir. Now, if you've seen some of my past videos, you know that I've played multiple Juggernaut Mjolnir characters. I've got my one that doesn't use a Vaults Devotion Amulet and my one that does. And it also uses Spell Crit. So what I wanted to do, I wanted to play a very powerful build for tackling a lot of the endgame content in Essence. And I'm very experienced with Mjolnir, so I wanted to make a Mjolnir build. Now I was thinking, oh, I'll just replay my Vaults Devotion Juggernaut. But then I was thinking, well, I really already have that character, and the only thing I'd be really testing is how non-Legacy Surgeon's Flasks perform versus Legacy Surgeon's Flasks. And that's not really that much of a test, because I could just craft new flasks and swap them into my old character to check that. So what I decided to do was to use a completely different Ascendancy and follow the same general build idea, and that's what this character ended up becoming. So the important things I was able to do with my previous character, that character cleared rather quickly, as long as on mid to high tier maps, like we're talking 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, he could clear quickly and comfortably for the most part, as long as he could kite the boss. And I farmed up enough currency with him to be able to buy the divination cards to afford to create a Vaults Devotion. This is the one that I made. The implicit doesn't really do anything, but that's okay. The main thing we want here is gaining an endurance charge whenever a power charge expires or is consumed. Although the implicit does do things on like low regen maps or no regen maps, which enables you to have some mana to be able to attack. So the idea of this particular build is we're going to have a high amount of Spell Crit, which we can then use the Inquisitor's unique mechanics to ignore resists, which gives us a lot of damage scaling against high-end bosses, while not having a lot of attack crit, because we use Romira's Banquet to generate our power charges, which we then use to trigger Discharge. Now, because of the fact that the Inquisitor, because of the fact that he has this inevitable judgment node here, this means that we don't need to worry about scaling penetration, because if we ignore enemy monster elemental resistances, that means that if we had a penetration gem or a curse that decreased enemies' resistances, it would just be ignored when we got a crit, which is what we're trying to get. Other powerful bonuses that the Inquisitor has, we get extra critical strike chance and multiplier from Righteous Providence, as well as the very powerful Augury of Penitence that causes nearby enemies to deal 8% less elemental damage and take, which is a more multiplier, 16% increased elemental damage. So I've done the math on this, and that 8% less elemental damage that they deal is like 2% max, like 2% extra maximum resistances. If you don't have extra max resist already, so that's quite strong. This node here it's okay. The cool thing here is that when we have Consecrated Ground, it's an extra 4% life regeneration, and we get 40% damage. So when you pop a Sulfur Flask, we get 40% damage from the flask, and then another 40% from the grounded crates underneath us for a very powerful damage boost. And it's actually more powerful than that, because I have 30% increased flask effectiveness with this character. So if you haven't seen my Mjolnir builds, this pathing is pretty typical for the spell crit ones, where I'll route down through the life wheel. My other one comes out of Marauder, and this one obviously comes out of the Templar, and my other build also routes into this damage wheel here and goes around the outside, but because I don't need penetration, I don't even bother to scale this. So again, because this build doesn't need penetration, we can just focus on scaling life and just raw damage output. For terms of the supports we used to support our discharge, I used Increased Area of Effect and Iron Will, and I swapped my Increased Area of Effect for a Concentrated Effect support. Now, another important thing that I talked about is, remember how I said you don't need to use a curse to decrease the enemy's elemental resist because it won't do anything? Well, that frees up our curse slot to use a powerful defensive curse like Enfeeble. And overall, this was quite strong. It was especially noticeable when enemies are not hexproof. And as you can see here, this is a spell shield, life, spell crit, spell damage with strength. That's really what you want on this build. You can use a Saphals, like I have skinned on this shield, for more effective defense, but I prefer the offense for most situations. So with this character, I went easily into tier 15 maps. I never got any T16s to drop, and I was also able to easily farm at Zeri as long as I didn't touch the mirror. So if you touch the mirror, you pretty much die almost instantly with this build. But overall, he was very powerful, very fun. while a lot of my gear isn't like super incredible, I have very good gloves. I have some pretty darn good rings and shield. My helmet actually has an enchant that does something, even though it just makes my discharge bigger. My discharge has 57% increased AoE without counting anything from the passive tree. Yeah, so overall, oh, see, I also reached 36 challenges this league. So I have the back attachment, the boots, the boot effect, and the essence portal. And it's pretty important to note that if it wasn't for the guild I was in, or just even having friends to play with, it actually makes progressing a lot more difficult. So as you can see here, I'm at 113 on map completion. This is my migrated Essence Atlas. I didn't play much standard after the Atlas of Worlds release, so everything you see here is my Atlas completion from Essence. So I didn't do some of the unique maps. I also never did Abyss or Core. I never got those to drop. And then I never did any of the Guardian maps, but I did buy a Shaper kill for my 36th achievement. I'm pretty sure that this character could give the Shaper a run for his money, and I could probably contest most of the Guardians as well. It's just a matter of getting the maps, and that's something I'm probably going to do soon. But one of the big things that I want to say about Atlas of Worlds is that if you're trying to play solo, it's very difficult to progress through a lot of the earlier maps. You'll like get a map drop, and then you'll complete that map, and then like every time in the early game it was very difficult to get the next map to drop on the Atlas. You had to keep running the one that was connected to it, and you had to keep getting those. And it could get pretty frustrating when you were trying to get into higher tiers, because you'd be speed farming these low tier maps, and then what would happen is you just get stuck because you wouldn't be able to make any progress. Now the way out of this was to either buy maps from other players or have friends or guild members that would share extra maps. And what I did with my guild is we had multiple tabs in the guild stash where we would share maps. So if, for example, if I didn't have marshes but someone else did, I could go and take it out and run it for completion. At the same time, if I had like way too many graveyards, I could put them in there, and then if someone needed a graveyard map, they could pull it out. And we, all the maps through yellow tier, anyone could take out and grab, and then once they got into red tier, you had to ask an officer for them. But I would say, especially in the next league, if you don't have a group of friends that you're playing with, or you're not part of a guild, and especially if you don't want to spend a lot of currency just buying random maps, I'd highly recommend finding some friends to play with. It can be something that's really beneficial, especially not only for your map tier, but you have people to talk to, people to bounce ideas off of about your build and their build, and it gives you a better understanding of the game as well as helps you to progress. You can also party up for things like unique maps, or if there's things like warbands maps where you need to kill them, you can like run a rotation with a bunch of your friends and people you know and trust, rather than with random people that you don't know at all. So yeah, in terms of what I'm planning on doing next league, at the beginning of this video I mentioned I was going to run like a starter build, and I'm currently planning on doing something with Chieftain Firestorm, and that could be pretty fun. I'm just going to try to make a big beefy character to handle Breach, and I think it should go pretty well until I can work my way into what I want to play later on. I'm not entirely sure what I will do after the first character. A lot of it will depend on the balance changes and then a lot of the unique items that are going to be available, that are going to be new. I have a pretty sneaking suspicion I might be able to make a pretty broken Mjolnir build next league, but it'll depend on getting a few items, and again, we will see. But all in all, I hope you guys enjoyed this review of the Essence League and a little preview of what I'm planning on doing the next league. If you have any questions or comments about either of the builds I presented, of the characters I played in this video, you can leave me a comment or a question, and I'll happily answer them. There's probably going to be a build guide coming about this particular character that I was working on. So I hope you guys have a great week. The Breach League begins on Friday, and I'm super pumped for that. I may be hosting some build review sessions on my Twitch channel, which is twitch.tv/SavageWolves. So if you're interested, let me know, and be sure to follow for when I actually go live. And yeah, with that, I'll see you around.